Now we are going to review the PIT survey questions and app. First, you will see a demonstration of the app while we review the survey questions. Then you will have the opportunity to practice completing a survey in the app while following along with the video. Of course, your trainer can pause the video at any time, so please don't be afraid to ask questions. The app we are using is Survey123. Before training, you should have received an email with instructions to set up your ArcGIS account. This is how you access the Survey123 app. If you have not done so already, please check your email, including your spam folder, and set up your account using the link in your email when your trainer says to do so. Please let your trainer know if you have not received this email. Please also let your trainer know if you already have an ArcGIS, Survey123, or Esri account through your employer. After today's session, you will have the opportunity to continue practicing completing surveys in the Survey123 app until Wednesday, January 24th, the day before PIT. So let's go ahead and get started. Once you have the app downloaded and you've logged in using the link in your email, please log into the app. Once you've done that, please allow the app to access your location, at least while you're using the app, because this is how we create the heat map. Then you can go ahead and download the HLA Homelessness Count PIT survey. Once you click and download that survey, you'll see it there on your My Survey 123 homepage. And then you're ready to go. To start a PIT survey, you just click that HLA Homelessness Count icon and then click Collect at the bottom of the screen. Your current location will automatically load to the map. If this is incorrect, please click the map and move it to select a new location. If you've allowed the app to use your location, you should not have to do this. However, if you need to, it's important to know how. You can also, in the search bar here, enter a specific address or location. Let's say I am completing surveys in a Walmart parking lot, for instance. I can select Walmart or enter Walmart, and it will give me options for addresses close to my location on the map. I just select that location and then the check box, and then it has my location in the map. I am then going to select my survey zone and zone code. Please use any zone and zone code for training. Once you have your zone and your code selected, hit the arrow to move forward. This next screen is going to be an introduction script. Please practice reading this and don't be afraid to make it a little more your own because nobody wants to be interviewed by a robot. Okay? Once I've read that, I will click the arrow and move on to the next screen. If they say they do have a few minutes to complete the survey, I will select yes, and then I'll ask if they have completed the survey earlier today. If they say that they have done a survey earlier today, I will select yes. I will ask where, say library, and then I will hit the checkbox and submit the survey. I will then thank them for their time and move on because we are not going to do a second survey with somebody. We are going to then move on to the next person. And when we start surveying the next person, we will hit collect. We will make sure that our location is accurate. We will select our survey zone and code. And we will read our introduction script again. Once we've done that, we'll hit the arrow. We will ask if we are able to survey this person. Yes. Have they completed this survey earlier today? Let's say this time they have not. This is their first time, so we'll say no. And then you will see the consent script pop up on screen. Please read the blue part of this script, which is a Pinellas Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, is the information system electronic database used to record and analyze client service and housing data for individuals and families who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Pinellas HMIS is used to 1. Understand clients' needs, 2. Plan to have appropriate resources, and 3. Inform public policy in an attempt to end homelessness. Only staff who work directly with clients or who have administrative responsibilities can look at, enter, or edit client records. Data may be shared without the client's consent in instances of serious threats of health or safety if it is believed that the use or disclosure is necessary to prevent or lessen a serious and imminent threat to the health or safety of an individual or the public. Once we've read that, we will move on to the next page where we record consent. We'll ask, do you understand? They say yes, we'll say yes. And do you agree to continue? If they say no to either of these questions, that's completely okay. We will just mark no. We will say reason for ending this survey refused. We will hit that check mark and we will submit the survey. We will thank them for their time and we will move on to survey the next person. However, let's pretend that they did agree to continue and then we'll move on to the next question. Before we do that though, please note, consent is really critical. The person might consent to completing the survey, but then withdraw consent for individual questions, and that is okay. Somebody is not required to answer every single question, though we do hope that they answer all the questions. So it's really, really important that that is understood. And once we have consent recorded, we are going to ask where the individual slept last night. Please note that we are only asking about the night of Wednesday, January 24th into the morning of Thursday, January 25th. If an individual states that they slept on the street, in a car, park, camp, or somewhere similar, please go ahead, mark that, and move down to the next question. If they say that they were staying in a shelter, transitional housing, or hotel motel paid for by somebody else, you'll see that you are prompted to ask, what is the name of the shelter or transitional housing where you slept last night? Or who paid for the hotel motel where you slept last night? Go ahead and record that information. Let's say they said HEP did. Somebody might also say that they were couch surfing, doubling up, staying at a friend's house, something like that. We do go ahead and complete these surveys as well. So if they say that, mark couch surfing and scroll down to the next question. However, if an individual says that they were in jail or prison, in a hospital or treatment facility, or in a house or apartment that they rent or own, and this does include hotel or motels that they pay for by themselves, please note that we are not able to complete these surveys. If they indicate any of these answers, jail or prison, hospital or treatment facility, house or apartment that they rent or own, then we will thank them for their time. We will click that arrow to submit the survey, and then we will move on to the next person. However, let's pretend that this individual was sleeping on a street. So we will scroll down and answer the next question. Do you currently have any other adults or children under the age of 18 in your household who are unhoused with you? So we are going to say yes. How many adults? Well, no adults. They are the only adult in their household. So we are going to answer 0 for that. How many children under 18? The answer is 1 there. So we are going to mark 1 by clicking that plus sign. And then we are going to hit the arrow to move forward. Now we are going to complete the survey for the adult who is standing in front of us. Please note that this question about survey category is the type of survey we will complete for this person. And there are 3 options here. Adult available means that an adult or an unaccompanied minor, somebody under the 18 who lives alone, under the age of 18 who lives alone, is standing in front of you completing a survey. Every present adult should complete an adult available survey. Adult not available means that you are completing a supplemental survey for an adult who is not present. You might complete one of these if, for instance, you're doing a survey with somebody whose spouse is at work. In that case, the person who is doing the survey, who is standing in front of you doing the survey, would be adult available. The spouse at work would be adult not available. Children is, of course, for anyone age 17 or younger, whether or not they are present. The only time you would not use children for somebody under the age of 18 is if they are an unaccompanied minor, in which case they would be adult available. The individual we are surveying who is standing in front of us is an adult. They are right there, so we are going to do adult available. They are the head of their own household. If you are doing an individual survey, they are always going to be the head of their own household. So they're the head of their household. Then we are going to ask if they would give us their first and last name. Of course, as with all questions, somebody might choose not to answer this question, but it is really important for us that we do get the answer to this question. First and last name is one of the primary ways that we ensure we are only counting people one time. So please do your best to get the first and last name. Let's say that this survey is for John Smith. We're then going to ask John if they know their date of birth. Let's say John does, and they are willing to give us their full birthday. Let's say John was born April 1st, 1962. So we are going to go to date. And then it looks like you're going to have to scroll through every year and month. Don't worry, you are not. If you click year there, you'll see that you can actually go through this little scroll bar and you can scroll down to 1962. Please note that you do have to have 1962 in the middle. You'll see here, I cannot click on 1961 or 1963 because it is not in the center, but I can click on 1962. While we are here, I want to note that this scroll only goes so far back as 1949. So if somebody was born in 1948 or earlier, you can use this toggle to 1949 and then use the arrows to go back further from there. So John was born in 1962. We're going to erase that birthday so we can put his correct one in there. May, I'm going to scroll through those months, though I could also do that same toggle. But I think we were April 2nd, 1962, which I think is what I said for John. So you'll see here that John's age has automatically populated. He is 61 years old. Perfect. Now we are going to move on to the next question, and we are going to ask John if he could provide us with his social security number or at least the last 4 digits of his social security number. Again, the social security number, the birthday, and the name are some of the primary ways that we ensure everybody is counted once and only once for the point in time count. So this data is incredibly important. Please try your best to get it. If John doesn't want to give us his social security number, we'll go ahead and we'll mark that as appropriate. However, let's say John does give us the last 4 of his social, we'll do partial. Then we'll go ahead and we'll type that in. Done. You'll notice that if instead of done, I had clicked that checkbox, it'll tell me that I haven't answered every question. So I'm not submitting incomplete surveys. Once I have the social security number entered, I'm going to ask John how they identify their gender. I am able to select as many options as needed here. And of course, as with all questions, this is based on self-reporting. So please do not answer this for John. Please let John answer this themselves. So let's say that John identifies as a man and as non-binary. We're going to ask John if they are currently pregnant. John is not. And then we're going to ask John what race they identify as. Again, you'll notice that you can select multiple options here. Let's say that John identifies as white. Then we are going to ask John if he currently serves or has ever served in the military. And let's say he is a veteran. Yes. And you can see, of course, before I hit yes, that it did still have that required box up. That's because, of course, I had submitted that checkbox, but I hadn't actually answered every question yet. So once I say yes, John is a vet, it'll prompt me to thank him for his service. So please thank John for his service. And then we're going to ask John what the last grade they completed in school was. Let's say John got their bachelor's degree. We're going to ask John how long they were in Pinellas County before they became unhoused. Did they arrive unhoused, which means that they moved here while they were experiencing homelessness? Were they here for 1 to 3 months, less than a month, less than 12 months before they started experiencing homelessness? Were they here for more than a year before they started experiencing homelessness? Or are they a lifetime Pinellas County resident? Let's say that John moved to Pinellas County 5 years ago. And was in Pinellas for a couple years before he started experiencing homelessness. So we're going to say 1 year or longer. Then we're going to ask John what area he mainly stays in. You can see here that you have multiple cities to choose from. You also have Hillsborough County and Pasco County, and you can choose other cities, states, and counties. If they choose other cities, counties, or states, please indicate that in the box there, Sarasota, let's say. Done. And then we would move forward. However, let's instead say that John is usually in Safety Harbor. Then we're going to ask if John was ever in foster care. Let's say no. And we're going to ask John about their sexual orientation and if they identify themselves to be heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, questioning, unsure, or if they don't know. And let's say John identifies as gay. And then we're going to ask John if housing related opportunities are available. Would you like to provide contact information so that we can contact you? This gives folks the opportunity to follow up with people after PIT. If John does want to be contacted, then our teams might reach out to him if housing related opportunities are available that might be relevant to him. So let's say John says yes. You'll notice that you can give a phone number, an email address, and or a frequent location or mailing address. You do not have to provide all of this information. But let's say that John gives us his phone number and his frequent location, which is the Maddie Williams Center in Safety Harbor. And done. Now we're going to ask John what the primary reason that caused them to lose their permanent housing this time was. Please know that you might get some backstory from folks here, and it's really important to honor that history while narrowing down the cause of this specific incident of homelessness. So let's say that John experienced homelessness when he was living in Virginia and then got a job offer in Florida. So John moved to Florida and was stably housed in Florida for a couple of years before he began experiencing homelessness because he lost his job. And then John got a new job, got back on his feet, managed to secure housing, ended up having to move out because he couldn't afford the doubled cost of rent and is now on the street. So the reason that John's experiencing homelessness this time would be not enough income. All of those other reasons, all of those other stories, all of those other parts of John's history are incredibly important. But again, we are narrowing down what caused this specific incident of homelessness, which is that John couldn't afford the doubled rents. So we're going to say not enough income. We're going to ask John if they've ever been evicted. If the answer is zero, please say zero. Let's say John has been evicted one time, though. So we're going to say one and then done. And we're going to ask John, was that eviction in Pinellas County? Let's say no. Then we're going to ask John, have you been in jail or prison within the last 12 months? Let's say, yes, John, spent a couple of nights in jail. You will notice the next three questions are all kind of a set. They are very related. And if you approach them this way, it might make answering them and helping folks answer them a little bit easier. So in the past 3 years, how many months in total do you think you've been unhoused? Remember, we are completing the survey in January of 2024. So we are thinking back to January of 2021. So since January of 2021, how many months in total do you think you've been unhoused? Well, you have here different options between 1 month and 12 months or more than 12 months, just to keep things a little bit simpler. So in John's case, he might say, I've been more than a year. I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. Perfect. And I'm just going to put more than 12 months for this. The next question is going to be, including this time, how many separate times have you stayed on the streets or in shelters in the last 3 years? So since that same January of 2021, John, how many separate times have you stayed on the streets? So you were unhoused for a little bit, and then you secured housing for a little bit, and you're back on the streets now. So that would be 2 times since January 2021. Okay, 2 times. So we're going to say 2 times. And now this last question in the set, how long have you currently been unhoused? We're going to say, okay, so this most recent time, how many months, years, or days has it been since you lost that housing? And let's say John said it was a year and a half. And you'll notice here that I cannot say 1.5, it'll just put 15. So I have to say, John, do you think it was closer to 1.5 years or 2 years? And if John says, I don't know, 2 years, say, okay, John, 2 years. There we go. And you'll see here, because I hit that check mark, I got required questions because can't submit an incomplete survey. So when I put in 2 years for John, it auto-populated 730 days so that you don't have to do that math. And now we're going to move on to health conditions. And we're going to ask John all of these individually. We're going to say, John, do you suffer from or have any of the following health conditions or issues? And again, please take this as self-reporting, not what you think the answer should be. So, John, do you have alcohol use disorder? Let's say no. Drug use disorder? No. A chronic health condition? No. A developmental disability? No. HIV/AIDS? No. Mental health disorder? No. Physical disability? Yes. Okay. And do you have access to health services or a medical clinic? And this might be, you might hear folks say, oh, well, I have the blue card, or I do the mobile medical or the MMU. That is the healthcare for the homeless program. If they say that, if they say they go to Bayside, then the answer is going to be yes. And then the last question on the survey is going to be about domestic violence. I'm going to pause on this because I do want to talk about the fact that this is a sensitive question, both to ask and answer. Of course, we have to approach this entire survey with care and compassion. But we also have to understand that this is a particularly sensitive topic for a lot of people. So please be prepared for folks to maybe be uncomfortable, maybe get quiet, or maybe rush through this answer. Please also be prepared for folks to say, what? So we'll start by asking, are you a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking? If they say, what does that mean? You might want to say something like, have you ever been afraid for your safety with a romantic partner or family member? And if they say yes, we'll mark yes, and we'll move down to the next question. Is the current unhoused situation a result of fleeing from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking? They ask what this means. Are you currently experiencing homelessness as a direct result of the domestic violence or that fear? Then we'll go ahead and mark their response. Yes, no, don't know, prefer not to answer. Let's say no. And then we will hit the arrow to move on to John's kids survey. We have completed John's survey. Congratulations. Now we're going to ask John about their kid. So for John's child, because this is a child under the age of 18, it does not matter if they are there or not. We're going to mark them as a child. Children. And we're going to ask John, what is this individual's relationship to you? John will say child. And then we're going to ask John for the child's first and last name. Again, please try really hard to get the name, birth date, and social security number because it is really important that we are able to ensure everyone is counted once and only once through this process. So let's go ahead and mark yes for name. And let's say they are Joe Smith. Of course, if John had chosen not to give you the child's name, we would just mark no, and we would move on to the next part. But they didn't this time. So Joe Smith. And then we're going to ask John for Joe's date of birth. Let's say that John gives us Joe's partial date of birth. That's going to be month and year. Let's say that Joe was born in May of 2014. So we are going to scroll to May. And then we can actually erase the year here and we can write in 2014. And then we just click on the page and it will auto-populate that in years. And Joe Smith is 9 years old. And now we're going to ask John for Joe's social security number. If John doesn't have that information or doesn't want to give it, of course, we can just say no or don't know or prefer not to answer. However, again, please try and get at least the last four. Let's say we do. There we go. And then we're going to ask John how Joe identifies their gender. Let's say that Joe identifies as a boy. And then we're going to ask what race Joe identifies as. Let's say that Joe identifies as white. And then we are going to hit the checkbox or the check mark. And then we are going to send the survey. And now we have completed a survey for John and Joe Smith. Way to go. Now is your opportunity to try a survey while following along with the video. So please go ahead and open your Survey123 app on your cell phone or tablet. Make sure that you have logged in and are allowing the app to access your location. Once you've done that, go ahead and download the survey, the HLA Homelessness Count Survey. And once you have that downloaded, it should be there on your screen. Go ahead and click the HLA Homelessness icon on your screen. And then to start the survey, you will hit collect at the bottom of the screen. You should not have to move your location on the map if you have allowed the app to access your location. But if you need to, you always can by clicking the map and then dragging it to the right location. You can also zoom in or type in specific locations here in the app and it'll pop up with the location for you. There we go. And now I'm going to select zone and code. Please choose whatever zone and code appeals to you the most, and then we'll move forward. And of course, every survey is going to start with this intro script because nobody wants to be surveyed by a stranger. So when you start the survey, please start out with something like, hi, my name is Victoria, and I'm a volunteer for the Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas. We're conducting a brief survey of where people slept last night to help us better provide programs and services for persons experiencing homelessness. And please understand that you can prefer or choose not to answer any question and that your participation is totally voluntary. Do you have a few minutes to complete this survey? Move to the next page. And if they say yes, then we will say, yes, we are able to survey this person. And then we will ask them, have you completed this survey earlier today? Again, if they said, yeah, I did it this morning, we'd say yes. We would ask where, and then we would submit their survey. But they didn't. This is the first time this person is doing a PIT survey this year. So we're going to say no. And then we are going to read the blue part of the consent script here. Once we have read that, we will move to the next page. We will ask if they understand and if they agree to continue. If they say yes, then we'll mark that down and we will move on to the real heart of the survey. And that first question is going to be, where did you sleep last night? Please remember, we are asking about the night of Wednesday, January 24th into the morning of Thursday, January 25th. So let's say that this individual says that they were sleeping on a bench in front of the library last night. We're going to go ahead and say on the street, in a car, park, camp, etc. We're then going to scroll down and ask, do you have any other adults or children under the age of 18 in your household who are unhoused with you? Say they say, yeah, I have a family with me. Perfect. How many adults 18 or older, not including yourself, are in the house? Let's say they say, well, there are two of us. This is a good opportunity for you to clarify. Okay, so it is you and one other adult or you and two other adults. They say one other adult, we will put one, and then they say, we also have one kid who is a teenager. Perfect. Then we're going to put one. Now we are going to move forward to the next question. We are going to choose the person's survey category. The adult standing in front of you completing a survey will always be adult available. And of course, they are the head of their own household. Now we're going to ask them if they will share their first and last name. So let's say they give us their name. This is Jane Doe. And let's ask Jane if they will share their date of birth. Again, this is really important because it helps make sure that folks are only counted once. So let's say Jane says, yeah, was born in March of 1980. We'll just go ahead. We'll do partial March 1980. We'll click anywhere on the screen that isn't that little check, and it will automatically populate Jane's age as 43. Now we'll ask Jane if she'll share at least the last 4 digits of their social security number. And let's pretend that Jane said, why do you need that? This is a perfect opportunity for you as a surveyor to, again, provide some more information. Well, we ask for at least the last 4 of your social security, again, just to make sure that everybody is only counted once. And don't worry, I, as the surveyor, don't have access to this information once I send it through, because as the surveyor, you don't have access to this information once you send it through. You cannot access a survey again once you've sent it. So let's say Jane says, okay, I'll give you the last 4. I don't want to give you my whole social, but I'll give you the last 4. Perfect. If Jane had said no, that is completely Jane's choice. We would just mark down no or prefers not to answer and move on to the next question. But Jane is going to give us the last 4. So we'll put partial, and we'll go ahead and say her social is 1234. We'll put that in and hit done. And then we're going to ask Jane what gender they identify as. And you can select multiple options here. So let's say that Jane says that they identify as a woman. We'll go ahead and put that down. And then we're going to ask Jane if they are currently pregnant. Let's say Jane says no. We're going to ask Jane what race they identify as. And again, this is another opportunity where they can, or another question where they can select more than one answer. So let's say Jane identifies as American Indian and white. We're going to ask Jane if she currently serves or has ever served in the military. Let's say Jane is a vet. We're going to thank Jane for her service. Then we're going to ask Jane what the last grade she completed in school was. Let's say Jane was a high school graduate. So we'll put that down. And we're going to ask Jane how long she was in Pinellas County before she became unhoused. If Jane says, what does this mean? You can say, well, have you lived in Pinellas County your whole life? If not, were you experiencing homelessness when you moved here? And if not, how long did you live here before you started experiencing homelessness? So let's say that Jane says that she moved to Pinellas County unhoused. So we'll say she arrived unhoused. And we'll ask Jane what area she and her family mainly stay in. Let's say she says Largo. I'll scroll and select Largo. And we'll ask Jane if she was ever in foster care. She says no. And then we'll ask Jane what sexual orientation she identifies with. And let's say that Jane identifies as heterosexual. And then we're going to ask Jane, if housing related opportunities are available, would you like to provide contact information so we can contact you? But let's say Jane does. So we say yes. And Jane says, I don't have a phone number or an email address, but I can usually be found at Salvation Army in St. Pete. We'll go ahead and we will put down frequent location. Salvation Army, St. Pete. Done. Then we will move on to the primary reason for Jane's homelessness this time. We'll ask, Jane, what was the primary reason that caused you to lose permanent housing this time? And again, this is one of those questions where you might get a little bit of the person's backstory. It is important to honor that backstory while narrowing down the reason for their homelessness right now. So let's say that Jane says, I arrived here unhoused because I thought that there were going to be resources. I'd heard that there are some good resources in Pinellas County. You would ask, okay, so what happened before you came to Pinellas County? What happened to where you used to live to cause this homelessness? Well, I left to, my partner didn't make me feel totally safe. So I left with my kid. And here we are. Then we will go ahead and mark left to escape abuse. And then we will move down to the next question. Jane, how many times, if ever, have you been evicted? Say Jane says 0. So we'll say 0. And then we'll ask Jane, have you been in jail or prison within the last 12 months? Let's say she says no. And now we're going to ask Jane, in the past 3 years, how many months in total have you been unhoused? So that's since January of 2021. How many months in total have you been unhoused? And let's say Jane says, well, been unhoused since 2020. Then that would be more than 12 months. And then you say, next question is, including this time, how many separate times have you stayed on the streets or in shelters in the last 3 years? So since January of 2021. And then Jane might say, oh, well, I mean, I've been on the street since 2020, but I did find a place to stay for a month back in 2022, in December of 2022. So I had housing for that month. So that would be 2 separate times. The next question is, how long have you currently been unhoused? So you said you'd been on the streets since January of 2023. Is that right? So we're gonna put 1, we're gonna hit done, and then that's gonna automatically populate days. Then we're gonna ask Jane about her medical history. And we're gonna ask Jane, do you suffer from or have any of the following conditions or health issues? Alcohol use disorder? Say she says yes. Drug use disorder? No. Chronic health condition? Yes. Developmental disability? No. HIV/AIDS? No. Mental health disorder? Yes. Physical disability? No. Do you have access to health services or a medical clinic? Let's say Jane says, well, I go to Bayside Clinic. That would be yes in that case. And then we're going to ask Jane, are you a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking? Jane said earlier that this was an experience that she had had, so we're going to say yes. And then the next question will automatically populate. Is the current unhoused situation a result of fleeing from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking? And Jane told us earlier that it was. So we'll go ahead and we'll mark yes. We have all of Jane's answers. We've completed Jane's survey. We are going to hit this arrow and we are going to move on to the next survey. This next survey is going to be for Jane's spouse. If Jane's spouse were standing in front of us, we would turn to them and we would say, okay, now it's your turn. And we would do an adult available survey. And this would be a complete survey. However, in this case, Jane's spouse is not here. Jane's spouse is at work. So we're going to do a supplemental survey as adult not available. And we're going to ask Jane because Jane is still the one answering this question on their or answering the survey on their spouse's behalf. Jane, what is this individual's relationship to you? She'd say spouse or partner. Say, all right, are we able to get this person's first and last name? Could you share that with us? And she'd say yes. And she'd say Andrew Jackson. And then we would ask if we could get if we could get Andrew's birthday. She would say, yeah, Andrew was born in June of 1981. Perfect. We will do a partial birthday. And we will go to June. And we will click the year. We will erase that and we will type in 1981. You could scroll, but I don't recommend it. I would just erase and type 1981. Save yourself some time. Click anywhere on the screen other than that checkbox or check mark. And it will automatically populate Andrew's age as 42. Now we're going to ask if Jane has Andrew's social security number, or at least the last 4. And let's say Jane says, I'm sorry, I don't know it. We would say, that's okay, Jane. We'll just mark down don't know. And do you know what gender Andrew identifies as? Let's say that Andrew identifies as transgender. And then we'll ask, do you know what race Andrew identifies as? And let's say that Andrew identifies as Black or African American. And then we would ask if Andrew is a vet. And if so, we would say yes. And we would say, thank you for their service. And then we would move on to the next survey. And this is going to be the survey for Andrew and Jane's kid. So this is going to be for somebody who is under the age of 18 and is not an unaccompanied minor. That means that they are not a minor who lives by themselves. So we're going to do child or children. And we're going to ask Jane, what is this individual's relationship to you? Jane will say child. And we will ask Jane for their first and last name. Jane will give it to us. Let's say it is Mary Doe. And we're going to ask for Mary's date of birth. And let's say Mary was born June 2nd of 2010. We'll go full date. Let's go to June and let's scroll. I think I said 2010. So we'll scroll to 2010, June 2nd, click that, and there we go. Now it has automatically populated Mary's age as 13. And we'll ask Jane, do you have Mary's social security number? Let's say she has a partial, which is 4567. Done. And then we will ask what gender Mary identifies as. Let's say Mary identifies as a girl. We'll go ahead and mark that down. We'll ask what race Mary identifies as. Let's say that Mary identifies as white. We'll mark that down. And then once all questions have been answered, we will hit the check mark and we will send the survey. And that is it. You have completed a practice survey.